consolidation project. At the end of next fiscal year, if all this comes to fruition, we'll have about a little over $130,000 left in the UCFD budget, and next year's budget will be much smaller than this. So with that, any questions on the UCFD budget?
Questions, comments?
Great. Yes, I just may get confused. Under sources of revenue, it shows capital construction revenue, parentheses includes federal, local match. So where does that come from?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Crane, capital construction revenue would be revenue coming in from the water company. We do have funds available for capital construction, so that would be coming, funds that would be coming in to say match the possibility of getting federally directed funding of $800,000 plus another $200,000 of capital construction funds that we would have available from the water company budgets.
Great. How confident are you that we'll receive these grants? American Rescue Plan funds, readily direct funds?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, the American Rescue Plan funds, I'm very confident that that $656,000 should be coming in. That really has been earmarked for the town. The town has agreed to pass those along to the water company to help in the construction of the water consolidation project. The federally directed money, congressionally directed money, $800,000 is probably, I don't know how free they are with the money right now. It seems like they are freeing up quite a bit of money federally, but it probably is a long shot that the submission for those was opened up to the entire state. So I imagine the competition for those monies is going to be pretty great and fierce. So I would not count on that $800,000 coming in.
The developer contribution.
Developer contributions, we that was put in there to reflect contributions if the northeast corner of Cape Creek Road and Carefree Highway comes in. Back when the original developer was looking at it, we figured their cost participation in the Carefree Water Consolidation Project would be in the neighborhood of about $1 million. So if the sale of that property does take place, and if we have a good buyer that's very interested in developing it, we're hoping that those developer contributions come to fruition and help us out with the improvements to neighborhood A that we need. Because the water system is getting very close. We're hoping that's not an impediment to their decision in purchasing that property and moving it forward into development.
Why would you put those two line items in a proposed budget? One is 50-50 chance on the 800, and then developer contributions. I mean, that's not even on the table. You don't have a buyer. I would think that it would be kind of an amendment or something to the proposal, or proposal part B or something, but the original budget seems.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, the issue would be is if you have it in there and it doesn't come to fruition, that's fine. It doesn't come to fruition. If you don't have it in there and it comes through and you don't have budget authority, you can't spend it. So you want to err on the side of caution and put in there things even if they are a long shot, because at that point you want, if they do come in, you want to be able to have budget authority. You really don't have the authority to keep going back in and amending your budget. You've really got one shot to set your annual budget. So you want to include everything in your budget.
So you wouldn't want to call it other potential financing sources? Because I was going to ask the same question. If we're not, I mean, I understand that we have to have a place for it or we can't spend it if we get it. But to me, this looked like we were planning on getting it. And then if we don't, then what do we do? So if you called it, I mean, it's probably an accounting thing, but you can call it a potential financial source. Or
If we don't, the actual money you'll be spending, Greg, will not include that 1,000,000 or 800. You have firm expenditures for, I would assume, the 17,816.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, that's correct. If we don't get those monies in, we then
You
do
don't
not
do-
turn around and expend them.
Right,
Um,
and count on it.
Right,
Yeah, because we didn't know the 1,000,007 in the
right.
hole.
We would not authorize those expenditures. We have not authorized those at this point in
You
time.
have to borrow money from Gary.
Yeah. This does not force us to receive those monies or expend those monies. It just allows us to do those things
Okay.
if it does happen.
Because I think if someone didn't understand that, the general public saw that, they're gonna make the assumption that that's our dollars we have, but it's not. Maybe a footnote or something, that's all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Point well taken. We could definitely change those to potential, add the word potential.
Mr. Crossman, it's my understanding as we look at debt service, the capital advance payment of 414,000 and the capital lease, the Whipper loan of 245. Those are for this coming year. And then we have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've suspended those in future years until we, in like year 5 or year 6, as I recall.
Mr. Chairman, the capital advance payment for the next fiscal year, so FY, will that be 2023, 24, will be reduced to $20,000 from $414,000. The capital lease payment, the WIFA loan, will stay in place at the full amount. So, but there will be a substantial reduction in the capital advance payment of almost $400,000.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments?
Greg, I do have one question, and this is kind of in line with what Stephen asked earlier. Is there anything that is not included here that could potentially arise, whether it be future, maybe grants that we may be eligible for water, or anything out of left field that maybe is in the back of your mind that
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Delicio, not that I know of. I guess we could go back and figure out if some of these sources of funding don't come to fruition, but we also have kind of bottom line budget authority. We could kind of replace, say, a developer contribution of $1 million. That doesn't come to fruition, but another source of funding does occur. We could find out. I believe we could still accept those funds as long as we have budget authority, and we could still accept them and then utilize them.
Thank you. Anything else?
Just one quick question. The public infrastructure construction, do we have enough funds currently to complete the water tank and all the piping and everything?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Johnson, yes, we do.
If that 1,000,008 didn't show up?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on from item 2 to item number 3. Presentation on the proposed Carefree Water Company budget, rates, fees, and charges for information only. Mr. Crossman.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Just to summarize our budget for the Carefree Water Company and our water rates proposal. Our proposal this year for FY 22-23 is consistent with the 5-year rate plan that the board approved back last year in 2021 in May, I believe it was. It does call for a 4.4% increase in both our base and commodity fees. That increase then results in the average residential water bill increasing by just about $5 per month, $5.05 per month. And that's based on an average usage of about 12,000 gallons per month. And this will put our revenues at about a $3.5 million mark for the Carefree Water Company. Just to give you an overview of some of our rate considerations that factored into this budgeting process. Again, we are continuing the course that was set by the Carefree Water Consolidation Project and consistency with the 5-year rate plan that was approved last May. does result in what I feel is still a strong capital improvement program of just under $363,000. That is down about 7% from last year, but when you consider last year's capital improvement program budget was up by about 35%. So this year going down by 7% is not a significant decrease. Some other rate considerations that factor into really how much was available in our capital improvement program, because that really is what we have left over when you look at all the other expenses that we have. We are expecting APS power rates to go up by about 5%. CAP charges, those are charges for our untreated surface water that comes from the Colorado River, are going to go up considerably by about 14%. That's a reflection of the tier 1 water shortage on the Colorado River. Essentially, the CAP has a significant amount of fixed O&M costs that get distributed over the amount of water they deliver. When we're in a shortage condition, there's less water to spread those costs over, so the cost per acre foot goes up. And that's why this cost is going up this year, because of the tier 1 water shortage. Scottsdale does the majority of our treatment of our CAP surface water supply. We do have a treat transport agreement with Scottsdale. And we are expecting Scottsdale's costs to go up by about 4% for their water sales to us. Our general and administrative costs that Megan develops, we are anticipating those to go up by about 8%. And our replacement and maintenance costs are going up a pretty significant amount by about 37%. We'll discuss those in a couple of slides here. So just to delve into a little bit deeper into some of these rate considerations, our G&A, or general and administrative costs, the details of G&A are included in pages 11 through 15 in your budget packet. As I mentioned, overall, we're expecting these costs to go up by about 8%. Some of the drivers for that 8% increase include our insurance costs are going up a sizable amount, about 35%. That's mainly being driven by the fact that we have a substantial amount of subcontracted work that we're doing in this next fiscal year associated with the Carefree water consolidation project. In fact, millions of dollars of subcontracted work. In the underwriter's eyes, subcontracted work equates to risk, and so that's why our insurance rates are increasing. Those should go back down after next fiscal year when we're not doing so much subcontracted work. Payroll expenses, we are anticipating those to go up 6%. That includes a 3.5% cost of living adjustment for all employees. It also includes a 2.5% merit increase for all of our employees, which I heartily support. All of the transition requirements to get the Carefree water, or the Cave Creek customers, transitioned over to Carefree water, which includes all the meter change outs, PRB installations, all the actual transition and flushing of the lines, all being absorbed by our current staff without any increase in staffing, along with inputting these customers into our billing system and doing all the things necessary to transfer these customers over to the Carefree Water Company system. So we're adding in a significant amount of work for staff without really increasing our number of staff. So I think a 2.5% merit increase for everybody is justified. We also are seeing significant increases in our fuel costs, just like everybody else is seeing. You know, prices of gas have gone way up, and we're expecting that to be maintained through fiscal year 22-23, and had an increase of about 24% from last year. Replacement and maintenance, which are on page, the detail of this item is included in pages 16 to 18 of your budget packet. Overall, these costs are going up about 37%. Fortunately, replacement and maintenance only represents about 7% of our overall water company budget. So it's not a huge amount of our overall budget. But we are seeing significant increases in our materials costs that we use to maintain and repair our system. That's just a reflection of the supply chain issues that everybody in the country is experiencing. We're also seeing a significant increase in our contractual maintenance costs, those items that we contract for as far as the maintenance goes, which would be electrical systems, emergency backup generators, those kind of things. Those costs are increasing significantly. Our field staff is also expecting a focus this coming year on valve maintenance, especially in the acquisition areas. Cave Creek does not have a valve exercising program. And so we are expecting that we're going to need to go into the acquisition areas and do quite a bit of possible valve repair, valve replacement, just making sure that we have operable valves in the acquisition areas. So that budget is going up 158% in this coming fiscal year. Again, the capital improvement program is very healthy. The details of this program are on pages 20 through 23 of your packet. The dollar amount is just under $363,000. For this coming fiscal year capital improvement program, we are not budgeting any money for fire hydrant additions. We have 12 new fire hydrants going in as part of the Carefree water consolidation project. So we're going to let the project handle those. Those are within our existing service area, so we will be improving fire protection within our existing service area. So we're not going to focus on that. As the water company, what we'll be focusing on are meter replacements at $50,000, valve replacements at another $50,000, technology improvements for our SCADA system, which is our supervisory control and data acquisition system at $30,000, $50,000 deposit into our long-term capital equipment plan, which again is being impacted by supply chain issues. Last year, our recommendation for deposit into this account was $41,000. This year, it's going up to $50,000, about 20 to 25% increase, just because vehicles, equipment, those costs are going up substantially with these supply chain issues that we're experiencing. And then what's left over, we kind of throw into a pipeline improvement budget, and that's right now sits at about $167,000.
Great, quick question for you.
Sure.
The meter and valve replacements, are these as a result of the acquisition, or are these replacing current Carefree water customers, and how long has it been since the last replacement?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Delicio, the meter replacement program, this money is specifically earmarked for our existing service area. And we've had this in the budget for at least 5 years now. So it's a continuing program. What we do is we identify those meters that are aged or have a lot of volume that go through them that we feel need replaced. Because what happens as meters age, they start to measure lower.
Yeah.
They start to spin slower. So we go in and we identify, again, those meters that are old or have a lot of volume on them. We go in and replace those.
I guess I'm curious as to how long they last.
Typically, water meters last anywhere from 10 to 15 years. And we do have some that are kind of had to play catch up a little bit. We do have some that are older than that, but we are getting kind of caught up with replacing our older meters. The valve replacement is going to be kind of a mishmash. We will be identifying valves in the current service area that need to be replaced, but we also have a focus on the acquisition area. So it may be all hands on deck as far as valves within the acquisition area, because they may have been neglected significantly in the past. So some of this budget may be used in the acquisition area. All right, we are recommending significant changes to a part of our budget that we typically leave alone when we talk about our budget and rates, and that's our fees, deposit, and charges section. We are implementing and have in this section of our budget, the rates that we put out there, a $20 acquisition fee. This is an addition to our base fee for any customer that's moved over from Cave Creek Water Service to Carefree Water Service. This was included in 5-year plan, and so it now is being formalized within our rates and fees. We also are proposing and recommending an increase in all fees related to new development. That includes a water capacity fee, new service line fee, and meter fees. And just for your information, the water capacity fee really is a one-time fee, buy-in fee for new development. What it represents is really a payment to the water company for existing capacity in the water system when new development comes in. And that would be things such as water transmission mains, existing water storage reservoirs, existing booster pump stations, chlorination facilities, everything that it takes to run a water system. If new development ties into that, they are helping to pay for the costs that have already been expended to provide those facilities. I have looked back, and those fees associated with new development have not changed since 2009. I've gone back and they were implemented either in 2009 or before, and they have not been changed since. What we're proposing for this year is to index those based on a consumer price index, which is some statistics that are published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And when you index those from 2009 up through the end of 2021, inflation has increased costs by about 27.5%. So that's the factor that we are recommending that we apply to each of these fees. So as an example, water capacity fee for a single family residential structure, a 1-inch meter, which is the smallest meter that we will install these days for a single family residential unit, would go from $3,639 up to $4,640. So an increase in fees for new development of about $1,000 for that single family residential unit. So significant increase, but there have been significant increase in costs and due to inflation over those 13 years since we've implemented those fees. Also, I'm recommending for your consideration a water supply fee, which is another significant change in our fee structure. And I do recommend that you take a look at the water supply fee report that's at the tail end of your budget packet. It's on pages 24 through 27. The premise for this water supply fee is that all new development should pay its way. That's typically how we do business in Arizona, how all states do business as far as new development. You don't put the burden of new development on existing ratepayers or citizens. You put it on the new development. To date, that's not how we've done it for water supplies. To date, our existing customers have paid upwards of $3.6 million for the water supplies that we have in our current portfolio. That would be the water supplies that we're using right now for existing customers and the water supplies that are available to use for new development. We also anticipate needing an additional about $1.3 million for new water supplies that could support new development. So what the water supply fee accomplishes is that it repays our customers for past expenditures, and it also develops a pool for funding in the future water supplies that we might need to generate to support future development. Our water supply fee recommendation and all the details of this calculation are included in the water supply report at the end of the budget packet. It comes in at just under $3,000 per acre foot of demand, of annual demand, $2,890, which really, if you look at today's market for water supplies, that's really a fairly reasonable rate on a per acre foot basis. The going rate for water supplies these days is about $7,000 to $10,000 per acre foot, which is what Queen Creek is doing a large water supply deal off the Colorado River, and they're at $7,000 an acre foot, and that's incentivized. So what this fee means for a new single-family residential unit, we'll standardize that, and we'll make the assumption that every new SFR has an annual demand of a half of an acre foot per year. So that fee then for that development would be an additional $1,445 in fees. For a new multifamily residential unit in MFR, the assumption will be about a quarter of an acre foot per year. So that additional fee would be $722.50. All other development and all other water demand would be calculated on the annual demand that's expected from that development times on a per acre foot basis times at $2,890 per acre foot. In the policy segment of the report, I do recommend that redevelopment get a credit for their historic water use. But for example, if we have an office complex in the downtown area that's proposed to go to a restaurant use, which is a higher user of water, they would get the credit for the past historic use as an office complex, but would have to pay that incremental increase in water demand that a restaurant use would incur. In the recommendations, I recommend that the water supplies not be able to be prepaid, be paid at the time of development, and that it's not refundable. And that will provide flexibility in development agreements for the water supply fee, which would give us the ability to include the water supply fee in any new development agreements. Typically would be associated with larger development projects, such as the northeast corner of Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway, the northwest corner of Tom Darlington and Carefree Highway, and the state land parcel along Stagecoach Path. Just to give you a comparison of what this water supply fee means in relation to other communities that surround us. For Carefree, if we implement only the increase in capacity fee, which we're indexing based on the consumer price index, that fee totals for a new single family residential structure $4,640. If we do implement the capacity fee and the supply fee, that total for a new SFR is $6,085. Our neighbor to the south, Scottsdale, a single family residential structure is going to pay $4,765 in water fees. So slightly more than our capacity fee only, less than our capacity fee and supply fee. For Cave Creek, our neighbor to the west, for a single family residential unit that has a one inch meter installed for it, their fee would be $7,628, so higher than both just the capacity fee and the capacity fee and supply fee sum. So just to give you an idea of where we're falling in relation to our surrounding communities. In summary, again, kind of circling back around at the start of the presentation, we are recommending implementing a 4.4% increase in our base and commodity fees. That's going to average our average residential customers' water bill will go up about $5 per month. We instituting a $20 acquisition fee for all those customers that come under the Carefree Water Company umbrella from the Cave Creek system. All of these are consistent with our 5-year rate plan. We are recommending a significant increase in our fees for new development based on consumer price index. And we are proposing a new water supply fee. So with that, I open it up to questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Crossman. Questions, comments?
Yes, Craig, as I recall, the 5-year budget, there was an increase in fees, and certainly with the financing projects we did. I think it was 4.4% for the first 3 years, and there's 4 and 5 or 2%. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, It was 4.4% for 5 years. So the first year of that increase was last year. So it'll be the second year of the 5 years of 4.4% recommended increase. We'll have 3 more fiscal years after this. After that, it's not as clear. It appeared that minimal increases would suffice after that, and that's what the 2% I think came from. But at that point, that was not really part of the recommendation. The recommendation was that 5-year plan of 4.4% increases, ending 3 fiscal years from now. And then at that point, you need to reassess what the economy is doing, what your costs are doing, how the repayment of the bonds are going to see.
Historically, we do about 2%.
Historically, our rate increases have been running more in the 3 to 4% range. So the 5-year rate plan was very consistent with what our rate increases were doing in the past, say 5 to 6 fiscal years.
Also, on the $20 fee for the transition cost, is that just to cover administrative costs and setting up the building and all? Is that how you're justifying that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it wasn't really administrative costs. It was kind of acknowledging that a lot of the majority or a lot of the costs associated with the Carefree Water Consolidation Project, a lot of the benefits were associated with neighborhoods A, B, and C. And it was our effort to say that those residents in those areas pay an additional amount towards the repayment of those bonds.
It's a one-time.
Pardon me?
It was a one-time payment. The
No,
$20.
no, this will be in place. This is a monthly base fee addition of $20 per month until at least through the end of the bonding period, which is 30 years.
For those 520 homes.
Correct.
I think as a point of clarification, though, it is, they were on a rate from Cave Creek, which had a base rate of $20 more. So it's holding
That's
that
not
flat.
accurate.
It's not,
It's an increase of anywhere from $5 to $15 on the base rate for those existing customers. It'll be an additional $10 to $15 on the commodity rate for those customers. So if you're on Cave Creek Water today, you transition over to Carefree Water, you're gonna see your total bill go up about $30, roughly 20 to $30, depending if you're on a boosted or unboosted meter. That's Cave Creek to Carefree.
Right.
If compared to new Carefree customer coming over from Cave Creek to an existing Carefree customer, you're gonna pay a $20 base rate per month surcharge for the next 30 years. And that generates, the new customers generate a little over $1 million a year in new revenue, and the bond payments are a little over $1 million a year in additional principal and interest payments. So it's having the new customers carry the majority of the weight for the cost of the project.
And the commodity rate you're referring to, that's a usage rate.
Right, the gallons,
Right.
the commodity rate, yes. I have a question, Greg. In your analysis, when you came up with your supply fees, you referenced the Bartlett Lake expansion and the cost of that water. We've talked in the past about participating in that study, but I don't see anything in the budget that would fund our participation in that study. Are you looking, you mentioned we need to find future water sources potentially. Are we considering that as one of our future water sources? And if so, should we be participating in that study in this fiscal year?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Geiger, excellent question. That's why I picked that alternative, future water supply alternative to include in here, because it is a very cost-effective water supply alternative if it does come to be. And I think, yes, it's going to be a future agenda item for the board to hear about raising the Bartlett Dam, the new Bartlett Dam and some of the water rights that it could generate. I think they have formed a committee. There's 2 types of members on this committee. There's voting members and non-voting members. And it's fair that what They tried to form this committee, or they formed this committee in order to generate about $5 million in local match. The federal government came up with $5 million, so they anticipated $10 million for the next stage of studying this new Bartlett Dam. And so this gave them the ability to come up with that local funding. We did miss the boat on being part of that, but there could be opportunity for the existing voting group to accept new members, whether we want to come in as a new full paying voting member, which is about a $400,000 commitment, a fairly sizable commitment. I don't think it would be worthwhile for us to go in at that level, but they do have non-voting members, which is about a $120,000 commitment. Again, they would have to vote to allow us to into this group. But I think that's something we should explore. And the implementation of this water supply fee would give us some funds to be able to fund that type of effort, and look into the Bartlett Dam as an alternative water supply. And that would be in association with what they call the SCIF, which would be the Salt River CAP interconnection facility. So essentially, any new water rights generated at Bartlett Dam would go down the Verde River, go through the Salt River Aqueduct, or the Salt River canals, Salt River project canals. Right now, there's the ability to take water from the CAP canal and put it in the Salt River project canals. SCIF would kind of reverse that and give the ability for water from the Salt River project canals to be pumped into the CAP canal. If water was then able to be pumped into the CAP canal, that's where we have our transport agreements with Scottsdale and Cave Creek. Once that water is delivered to the CAP canal, then we could take that water via Scottsdale, via Cave Creek, and deliver it to us. So, this is very much a long-term water supply discussion. I think it's something that we should keep our tabs on.
That $120 to be $120,000 to be a non-voting member, that's over multiple years, right? It's not all in front.
Yes, that is actually $30,000 a year for 4 years.
So if we were to approve the budget with the cap and supply fees, we have money available in 2022-23 budget year to participate in that?
Not necessarily from that fee, although potentially, depending on what developments come in, we would probably need to find places in the budget to, actually in the first year, we'd need $30,000. So I'm sure we could find the budget for $30,000 to pay in. And then in subsequent years, we need to find the budget authority for $30,000 for 3 more fiscal years.
Yes, I would encourage you to do a final budget to maybe make sure we have a placeholder. And then the last question, we talked in the past about recharge projects as another source to improve our water portfolio in the future. Is that something that's going to be addressed in 22, 23, or is that something with too much else going on we can't get to?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Geiger, it is something that I really would like to do. We've tried to address it with Scottsdale. We've run into some institutional issues because of some legislation and prohibitions against leasing water that are in our CAP contract and provisions in state law, which are called water bud. Talked to Gary about, which make it very difficult for us as a non-designated supplier to do recharge. But it's something that I would like to not have drop off the radar, because I think it's a good way for us to firm up our non-Indian ag water, which is the most recent water supply that we've purchased, 112 acre feet of non-Indian ag water. It is probably, projections are that that'll be available probably 60% of the time as we move into the future.
Even with all the problems on Powell and Meade?
They're always revising their projections, so I don't know what the latest is. Kind of the availability goes up and down. The last I heard, it was available about 60% of the time. In fact, this year we've taken 100% of our NIA water. We ordered 100% of it, and so we are taking our non-Indian ag water. We'll be doing the same thing next year because it is available even in the shortage situation. It's being firmed up So, but we'll need to investigate some additional funding for that 40% of the time that it's not available.
So there probably won't be a budget placeholder for recharge in the coming budget.
Not in next year's fiscal year budget.
Yes, I have a few questions, right? So on the recharging, could we maybe ask our water attorney for some direction on that, or just his thoughts? I understand it's difficult, I get it, but
Yeah.
you know something that we don't.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Crane, it's something that Mike Pierce and I have had multiple discussions on how do we get around some of these institutional issues. And we've tried to think outside the box. There's provisions for water exchanges. Those get real complex. So yeah, we've had numerous discussions. Every year, legislation gets proposed to remove water bud, but it does always seem to meet roadblocks. And so hopefully some year that what does come to fruition would allow us to do recharge easier and really carefully.
Another question on the water supply fee. Does that go into like the general fund, or do we set it aside into a fund for like the Bartlett Lake project or something else, so we can save it up until we're ready to go?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Crane, theoretically, we could put it back in kind of our general accounting because it's repaying funds that have already been expended by our customers. That's not what I would like to do with it. I would like to pull that money in and put it in a separate account so that we could save it up. We really don't have to have it in our general budget right now, but we could save it up for doing things like investigating the Bartlett Dam water supply, the SCIF recharge. But we need to start somewhere in accumulating these funds. And that's why I'm making this recommendation.
So that's what we'll do.
Under my watch, that's what we'll do.
On the pipeline, we have like $100,000 for pipeline. So will that allow us to provide fire hydrant service to residents who don't currently have it, or is that just replacing the existing pipe, the same pipe that's newer? Or is that all about?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Crane, I'm holding that in a fund, so hopefully to actually replace pipe or improve pipes in areas that either have deficient pipe systems or, well, deficient in a couple of different ways, either deficient in material where we have a lot of failures or deficient in size where we maybe don't have fire protection and need to increase the size. Unfortunately, $166,000 doesn't buy a whole heck of a lot of pipe, but again, we have to start somewhere and start putting the funds away so we can do these type of projects.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Crossman. As you're aware, there's an initiative on the ballot which impacts the water storage reservoir along Tom Darlington. And if that initiative were to pass, can that be accommodated? What costs would be involved in that? And can it be accommodated within the budget?
Mr. Chairman, no cost for doing that if that proposal initiative does pass are not included in our budget right now. We anticipate to remove the reservoir that will be completed at that site and replace it somewhere else. Probably is going to cost anywhere from $8 to $10 million. We do not have that amount of money budgeted. That's a significant amount of money. That's about 50% of what we budgeted for and bonded for the Carefree Water Consolidation Project. So there's no way we could absorb that in our rate structure, even though if we spread it over 5 years. So probably we'd be looking at another bond issuance to the tune of $8 to $10 million. If you consider our bonding effort for the Series 2021 bonds, our repayment obligation for that is about $1.1 million per year. So bonding for about half that amount would be looking at about $500,000 per year, which would be a significant increase in our budget. Our budget at $3.5 million would have to be increased all in one fell swoop to about $4 million. So we're talking a 15% increase in our budget, which, just back of the envelope numbers means 15% increase in water rates. So would have a significant impact on our budget and on our water rates if all of that comes to fruition.
Thank you. Any further questions? We're
Yes.
running a little long
Real
here.
quick, Greg, on the insurance cost during the construction in the next 5 years, does our liability end when the project is done, or is there potential legacy issues or any injuries?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, in my opinion, I haven't asked that question directly to the insurance agent, but I think after these contracting efforts end and they come to closure, then I think our additional risk then ends and our insurance rate should go back down. Obviously, they want to see if there are any claims against these contracts.
I'm sure that's all closed out before that policy.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on item number 3? Hearing none, let's go on to item number 4. Review, discussion, and possible action to approve resolution 2022-02, adopting the proposed Carefree Ucfd budget and the proposed Carefree Water Company budget, rates, fees, and charges, and calling for a public hearing. Okay, we have just heard the overview of both of those, the UCFD budget and the Carefree Water Company. These are proposed. There will be a public hearing, inputs taken, and then we'll come back with the final budget later. So, Mr. Crossman, would you like to take it from there?
Mr. Chairman, I think you did a good job at explaining resolution 2022-02. What it does approve the proposed budgets for both the UCFD and the water company, and the proposed rates, fees, deposits, and charges for the water company. Does order the public hearing, which will be the next agenda item. So with that, I'll put a possible motion up on the screen for the board.
Okay, Greg has summarized the possible motion, approved 2022-02, which are proposed budgets for the UCFD and the Carefree Water Company in terms of budget overall, rates, fees, deposits, and charges, and ordering a public hearing. Will anyone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. So I'd like to open the public hearing, item number 5, on the proposed Carefree UCFD budget and the proposed Carefree Water Company budget, rates, fees, and charges. Would open it up for public comment. If someone in the public has a comment, would you please come up to the podium, state your name, your address, and please hold your comments to 3 minutes. Hit the top lines on those things. And I would reinforce that this is not a political meeting. This is relative to the water company and the UCFD, and have them specific to that. Thank you.
Serve all the residents of Carefree, not just the voting block.
Thank you. So you talked about the ballot initiatives that are coming, and you don't want this to be anything about ballot initiatives, but it's kind of interesting that Mr. Crossman spoke about it and what the budget's going to be. I want to know, as a Carefree resident, that why you can't stop the construction briefly until the August election. It allows Carefree voters to give our authorization and have our voices heard. Yet the town wants to continue to push forward with construction on the whole, all the while knowing construction could be retroactively undone by a vote of Carefree voters. Carefree residents never voted for this water transition debt of 30 million, even if council was elected 2 years ago. 3 current council members, Geiger, Johnson, Crane, and 4 planning and zoning commissioners, Hitchin, Farrell, Burns, and Davy, all live in the Cave Creek Water Service area transitioning to Carefree Water. These town officials are clearly represented and benefit from their influence and active roles while discussions and decisions happen without the approval of all Carefree residents. Our town government makes decisions for residents with little to no public awareness. Carefree voters will have the opportunity to vote August 2nd on August 2nd, 2022 on pivotal decisions facing our town. I would encourage our residents to get out and vote and have your voices heard. There are 2 ballot initiatives, open space, and 2 2-year term limits that need to be looked at by all Carefree residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Hearing none, I would close the public hearing. Item number 6, adjournment. May I have a motion?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion's made. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Let's take 5